We are told in school that a battle, an assassination, a single speech changed the world. We are shown dates, faces, flags. We hear about courage, patriotism, national rivalries. Yet no one mentions that one day, over a table covered in maps, a handful of men imagined a line of iron so powerful it could shift the wealth of entire continents. No one mentions that at the dawn of the 20th century, before cannons thundered and borders exploded, a simple idea began to crack the order of the world, linking the heart of Europe to the burning edges of the Orient with an unbroken ribbon of steel. Picture a single rail running from capital to capital, defying maritime empires, sliding past the helpless gaze of fleets that ruled the seas. Around that dream and the fear it awakened, our story begins. Picture the planet around 1900. Classroom wall maps are covered in one dominant color, stretching from continent to continent. On those maps, one power seems to control everything: seas, harbors, straits, trade routes. At the center of this chessboard, another state, young, industrious, restless, chokes behind land borders. Further away, an ancient empire is coming apart, eaten away by foreign creditors, squeezed by hungry neighbors. Three worlds brush against each other, size each other up, distrust each other. Between them, a line still invisible on maps is about to change everything. In the paneled salons of the capital that rules the oceans, decision-makers feel untouchable. Their strength rests on battleships patrolling straits, on a narrow canal that shortens the journey to their most precious colony, on a currency accepted everywhere without question. As long as ships loaded with goods, soldiers, officials must pass through their guarded passages, their hands do not shake. Yet at the same time, far from those wind-beaten bays, another center of power stirs. There, in an inland metropolis, factory chimneys spit out heavy smoke day and night, a sign of unprecedented productivity. Workshops hum, laboratories innovate, universities shine. Engineers calculate, draw plans, dream of steel and speed. But this power, boxed in by hostile frontiers, lacks reliable outlets, cheap raw materials, direct routes to sell its output. It watches seas dominated by an old rival and understands that the coming struggle will not be won on waves alone. Farther to the southeast, another scene unfolds. A ruler watches his immense territory fragment. Provinces rise up, neighbors advance. The state coffers stand empty. Debt certificates pile up on the desks of foreign bankers. Taxes taken from his own subjects flow toward distant capitals. Every harbor, every stretch of track, every customs post seems tied to outside interests. Yet on these arid lands beneath these ancient cities, the potential is huge. Farmland, resources, a strategic position between several enclosed seas. To rise again, he needs a network that is modern, fast, autonomous. At this crossroads of clashing interests, the idea of a titanic land axis appears. Imagine a convoy leaving a great industrial city in the north and sliding southward, crossing plains and mountain chains, spanning rivers and plateaus, reaching regions still barely plugged into global circuits. No controlled straits, no maritime customs imposed by a foreign fleet, no dependence on risky sea lanes. A single metallic backbone laid across thousands of kilometers, tying together workshops, markets, deposits. The champions of this vision speak of more than trade. In fiery speeches, they describe a new symbiosis. On one side, the industrial might of a country producing steel machinery, weapons. On the other, the space and riches of an aging empire desperate for a lifeline. On paper, the partnership looks miraculous. Trains will carry raw materials to factories, finished goods to inland ports, troops to distant frontiers. For some, the project is a shortcut to global stature. For others, it is a chance to break a humiliating dependence. In the soft-carpeted offices of financiers who rule international money flows, the first talks begin. How do you fund thousands of kilometers of track across mountains, deserts, jagged plateaus. Who will control stations, branches, mining rights along the line? Each tentative answer sketches a little more clearly an unbalanced future where the economic center of gravity might slip away from coasts held for decades by masters of the sea. Contracts are signed, banks commit, special companies are born to carry the project. On the ground, work begins. Teams of laborers blast tunnels through rocky massifs, lay sleepers under a merciless sun, raise makeshift bridges over ravines. You hear the crash of explosives, the grind of machines, orders barked in several languages. Forgotten villages see columns of materials pass. European engineers set up temporary offices in old cities. Each stretch of rail, wrested from dust, brings the line a little closer to one of the planet's pressure points. Meanwhile, on the island that commands the seas, military maps come out of their drawers again. Strategists draw red lines, measure distances, calculate travel times. They project regiment movements, cargo flows, fuel transfers. Their eyes lock on a corridor that could bypass their guarded straits, ignore their fortified ports, cut down to almost nothing the edge their fleet has given them for so long. A land route able to carry both wealth and armies without touching their cherished waterways forms a threat their manuals never anticipated. Anxiety swells as field reports arrive. Kilometers laid, stations opened, tunnels completed. What once looked like an engineer's fantasy becomes, month after month, solid reality. In newspapers, some columnists start worrying aloud about a looming shift in the global balance. In corridors of power, memos grow darker. A simple iron line running far from the oceans seems ready to undermine an entire system of dominance built first on sails, then on armoured hulls. From that moment on, every decision about this route takes on dramatic weight. Should they try to join the scheme to steer it from within? Should they instead choke it with money, block its outlets, isolate its political partners? Around closed-door meetings, diplomats craft discreet agreements with local leaders whose lands lie at the southern end of this future corridor. A single signature at the bottom of a secret document can doom a whole branch to a dead end. Language itself turns into a weapon. In major capitals, opinion campaigns frame the project as backward, authoritarian, dangerous for ordinary people. Fingers point at its sponsors, accusing them of crushing populations, threatening regional stability. Front pages fill with caricatures, outraged headlines, embellished tales of supposed brutality. Behind those fiery columns lies a quieter goal: stripping the infrastructure of legitimacy before its first full convoy ever reaches the sea. And still, despite financial hurdles, diplomatic pressure, moral attacks, the route creeps forward. Slowly, unevenly, with abrupt halts and spectacular bursts of progress, each completed segment adds a piece to a giant puzzle whose final shape terrifies guardians of the existing order. As rails line up, an alternative strategy emerges before their eyes. A land path that can expose coastal bastions, blunt naval superiority, redraw access to the energy of a new age. When political tension among great powers crosses its first critical threshold, this line no longer looks like a simple engineering venture. It becomes a symbol, a test, a focal point where fear, ambition, resentment converge. On one side, it promises a direct link between factories and resources, between metropolises and remote provinces. On the other, it embodies an unbearable prospect: a maritime empire watching its routes being bypassed, its guns less decisive, its influence fade. At that precise moment, before the roar of general mobilizations drowns out everything else, before patriotic manifestos flood the press, before rows of men in uniform vanish into stations, a quieter truth settles in. The coming clash will not only concern borders penciled onto a European map, it is also binding itself around a choice of infrastructure, around an unfinished rail that still winds across calm mountains. Here is where imperial logic tilts, where the decision to let a simple metal line live or die begins to outweigh every official speech. When tension reaches its breaking point, the steel line already laid becomes more than an ambitious construction site. It morphs into a potential battlefield. In anxious capitals, military reports now mention this corridor alongside vital straits and canals. Officers calculate how many wagons loaded with rifles, shells, fuel could race along those rails in days. Ministers ponder, letting this metal skeleton complete itself would hand a rival direct access to zones once shielded by ocean. The era of theoretical warnings ends. The hour of brutal choices arrives. In eastern palaces, the initial illusion of salvation cracks. The ruler, hoping to reclaim some sovereignty, discovers each built kilometre draws contradictory forces around his territory. One side, the industrial ally, promises machinery, armaments, financial backing. The other, old maritime powers, multiply veiled threats, ambiguous pledges, conditional guarantees. The rail, meant to carry loyal troops to desert marches, draws mainly outside greed, yet for a debt-exhausted regime, abandoning this artery would mean accepting slow death. When the crash of first mobilizations erupts, stations hum with shouts, whistles, boot stomps on platforms. Recruit convoys head west, but also towards stark valleys, stifling plains where the incomplete infrastructure snakes. German, Turkish, British, French, Russian officers see each segment as chance or trap. Continental Europeans dream of rushing whole divisions to distant fronts via this new vein. Island strategists draft schemes to sever key stretches, seize junctions, claim scattered partial terminals amid sands. Across arid lands, fighting takes a paradoxical turn. While European plain soldiers bog down in mud, those pushing along Middle Eastern rivers face blistering heat, water shortages, ravaging disease. Every rail bridge turns target, every small depot fallback or bombing mark. Local commanders know their state machinery's survival hinges on funneling reinforcements, provisions through these fragile paths. Enemy generals grasp that snapping arches, wrecking repair shops can cripple an entire force. Where the route climbs heights, dreams of seamless flow crash against terrain reality. Gaps linger between sections, sometimes over tough passes. Northern trains unload cargo at a finished stretcher's end. Men, guns, ammunition crates hoist onto trucks, carts, even pack animals. The makeshift caravan crosses dusty ridges, rugged trails before finding rails farther on. This back and forth drains troops' gear. Each lost hour lets the sea-dominant foe hurl more forces from controlled harbours. Meanwhile, in dim Western Chancery offices, two diplomats etch fresh lines on regional maps. Their pencils slide from fertile valley to coastal harbour, skirt holy city, shadow distantly the rail whose segments still smoke. They carve whole areas into influence zones, split oil fields, reserve seaward corridors. Their aim goes beyond shattering a defeated old empire. Guarantee no single land axis ever again ties energy reservoirs to Central European factories without their political sieves. In deserts, local rebel bands get guns, gold for pinpoint strikes. They're tasked to blast bridges, sabotage sleepers, sever linked telegraph wires. Naval power adventure officers run this rail guerrilla war, urging horsemen to hit supply trains. Amid conflict's fleeting images, rise black smoke plumes from shattered viaducts, toppled locomotives in dry wadi beds. Gear once meant to bind territory now draws prime hits to tear it apart. As armistice nears, the long-dreamed corridor survives only as incoherent fragments. Stretches isolate in newborn states, others fall to foreign mandates, mere kilometres stay under old Imperial Corps' grip. Visions of steady wealth flow yield to a jigsaw of segments, each facing distinct customs rules, currencies, rival garrisons. Yesterday's leader's modernization dream gives way to exploitation, setup crafted to block autonomous knitting. New regional pivot masters quickly see buried pipes offer political edges over rails. Where trains haul passengers, ideas, papers, weapons, quiet pipelines just pump precious liquid. Giant firms spawn consortia, ink concessions, lay routes sometimes hugging the old rail plan. Local spot pumping stations rise amid wretched hamlets, steel tubes snake to slick marine terminals, yet see no boost to their roads, schools, clinics. The aborted old artery vanishes from no general staff plans. During Fresh World Blaze, a continental totalitarian regime's tacticians eye those same valleys, heights thinking black gold tanks. Agents stir coups, topple sea rival-leaning governments. Naval forces defy range again to grab crossroads, fields, lock depots, hold usable stretches. Battle names shift, flags renew, but corridor fight stays same. After that second planet storm, the cash-strapped ocean empire retreats. Another force from vast rich continent assumes median corridor watch. It bankrolls friendly regimes, backs overthrows, plants bases, arms proxies, pens full doctrines on blocking rival grip over Eurasian landmass. Multilateral bodies, military pacts, security deals orbit this fixation. Clutch passage points linking Europe, Central Asia, oil gulfs. Yet at new century's turn, another Eastern giant economy surges. Its leaders, alert to sea lane frailty, dust off ancient land notions. On digital maps, engineers, planners sketch swift lines, modern highways, energy ducts tying inland harbours, capitals, factory zones to European shores. Planet scale, these strokes echo, vast and multiplied, the old link from Germanic hub to Mesopotamian towns. Where one rail once sufficed, diverse path webs now launch like intricate mesh. In today's naval power halls, speeches swap terms but hold same deep dread. Talk swirls of debt traps, strategic hazards, tech reliance, illicit sway. Asia-funded upgraded ports spark uproar, power grids, telecom webs, hypermodern depots branded Trojan horses. Beneath refreshed talk, one fixture. Fear of land access blooming to skirt fleet-patrolled straits. On ground, midway states land in painfully familiar spot. Like old Ottoman lords squeezed between European lenders, German industry mates, today's cabinets waver between Eastern fast-build pledges and Western dire cautions. Bridges, plants, rail hubs, deep-water docks turn influence levers. Choices in humble ministry rooms can unleash media firestorms, penalties, cash squeezes, even political shakes. While non-stop news cameras fix on faith clashes, ethnic feuds, identity rants, deeper reality layer keeps shaping strife. Transport corridor geography. Iraq fights, Syria uprisings, Strait strains, Anatolian crises unfold along old general trace where rusted rails sleep under dunes. Current maps of army posts, oil trails, upgraded iron paths hug eerily pre-1914 visions. Gazing at these overlays, one unsettling takeaway lands. What began as deal between weakened monarch, bold emperor spawned legacy-spanning eras, creeds. Halted build, reordered bounds, bonds, grudges. Early last-century envoys drew artificial edge states to thwart rail axis unity. Heirs still handle fallout at global talks on chronic unrest, terror, people flows. Today, when a driver tops off tank at price swaying with far events, he feels unknowingly old call echoes. When papers report land link from Asian East to European core, advancing or stalling, they chart modern twist on antique continental tie dream. When chats flag world order frailty, naval top dog versus swelling inland paths, they revoice differently, British plotters chills watching first rails burrow Anatolian soil. Deep down, this unfinished line tale tells truth nationalist chants fumble. Highways, channels, ducts, depots reshape globe like peace packs, clashes. Each time top power senses edge, slipping from fresh passage, it unleashes full arsenal, cash, coaxing, scheming armed might. Yesterday one iron path vowed to upend balances, today whole nets seize that torch. Mapline draws already settle clashes, ties, crashes ahead, long before any first cannon booms.